So, Joyce, I've shared with you that one of the ways I begin to think about hope is really about hope as mobility. And I'm just curious, you've done so much work in practical theology and in so many different settings. And so this concept of hope is nothing new to you. But I want to know, just does this idea about hope as mobility resonate as in regard to thinking about practical theology as a discipline of mobility, but also just in regard to a theology of hope? Does this idea of mobility resonate with you in any way? And how would you challenge me as well?
Oh, interesting. I'm sitting here thinking about, the spirit in which we live and move and have our being, and that movement is a quality that we associate with the Spirit of God. We associate the wind blowing spirit, the dynamic element of the Trinity, right? The moving part there. But a lot of our practices and rituals in Christian faith tradition are about movement. We travel with Jesus on the journey to the cross. We walk, Catholics, Stations of the Cross, that's a moving. Yeah. We walk the labyrinth as a spiritual practice, that is a movement. And that the idea that there is hope connected to that is intuitively sensible, right? I then think about the ways in which, what other words we put with movement as a kind of how this practical theologian thinks. I think about movement through, mobility as a term. We talk about upward mobility and downward mobility. Isn't that interesting? That's the consumer capitalist way of framing what it means to be mobile. You're either going up or you're going down. We talk about moving through something or movement within a context. There is it's not that it's not dynamic there, but it's different than seeing yourself as either moving up or moving down. So I think one of the possible critiques that practical theologians might bring to the way movement is expressed, the way mobility is expressed in human experience, is this kind of captivity to late capitalist consumer culture where you're either up or down in your mobility. And the notion that you can be a dynamic human experiencing life in a context, working through, living through, moving through that context, ought not be lost from that. One of the things that practical theology is about, of course, is the crossing of disciplines to engage in inter- and cross-disciplinary explorations of whatever phenomenon we're dealing with. So we try to drink deeply from many wells. Right. And what I see in the juxtapositions of incarceration, hope, mobility and movement, in these framings of that human experience as we've constructed it in our time and age, are the need for many different perspectives to shed light on that. So we can't interpret that situation from one angle alone. Right. So it might be tempting for some to bring in classical theological loci and name what's happening there in relation to those, without understanding the prison industrial complex and all the realities of race and class and all the other things that are going on there. And then it seems like hope is absent. Right. But if we use many disciplines to try to make sense of what's going there, and always we're dealing with provisional sense-making, then we could lift up, for instance, in the way that you are, mobility, and what happens if we make that a center point for a moment and focus attention from many different discourses in relation to that. So I think it makes great sense to do that work. I wonder if there are other ways than hope, other perspectives. I wonder if hope is something that gets imported into prison context from the outside.
Hmm.
Is that do we need to wonder with those women whether there's some other framing for what it is that we are grasping at when we use the language of hope? We mean this set of things. But maybe from the inside, from within the prison situation that the women are actually living in, maybe hope is a limiting term. Maybe it doesn't quite say what that yearning, longing, hunger, hoped for, if I can use hope within it, transformation,
Right.
the ability to transcend this reality that I've gotten stuck in is something what you're talking about with movement and mobility. Is there another term that might better suit that? It would be interesting to listen for that, to wonder about that with people.